Hi, it's Patrick. In this video, I want to share a simple but powerful idea that could change the way that you look at your past, especially moments that still hurt you today. And I call it Reframe the Pain. And it's based on neuroscience, psychology, and the real life stories that we tell ourselves. Yesterday, I was talking to a mum called Andy, and she told me about her difficult childhood. Her father had been aggressive, had yelled at her, and she really felt like it had left a mark her whole life. And I asked her something that wasn't easy. I said, can you see the positives that came from that experience? Not because I wanted to dismiss the pain, but to ask her what else might be true about it. Now, that question might sound strange, but I'd like to explain why I asked it, and I think this can be helpful for all of us. Neuroscience shows us that the brain is constantly assigning a value, either positive or negative, to every experience. As Antonio Damasio puts it, the great neuroscientist, the brain is constantly mapping not just the body, but also the relationship between the body and its environment, assigning a value, positive or negative, often before we are consciously aware of it. Think about it, it's amazing. That value we assign, the thing that scientists call valence, shapes our emotions. So if we assign a strong negative value to something, we feel pain. Whereas if we see both sides, the positive and the negative, our emotional response becomes way more balanced. You know, one parent once told me, I shouted at my kid and later I thought, I feel so guilty, I'm a bad parent. And that guilt then becomes a loop, not because of the event itself in of itself on its own, but because of the meaning, the negative meaning that they gave it. Let's look at something like PTSD, for example. It's often not just the memory, but the emotional charge, the intense negative value that's been stored inside the body. A reaction that once made sense to the trauma, the traumatic event, now gets triggered in moments that don't call for it. And that's how that PTSD negative loop continues. But here's the amazing news. Incredible thinkers in psychology like Beck, Albert Ellis, Judith Beck, Richard Lazarus, and James Gross have shown us that we can change our emotional reaction by changing the meaning and the value we assign to the experience. So Richard Lazarus said, the interpretation of stressful events is more important than the events themselves. And that's huge. It means it's not the event itself, it's the story and the value we attach to it. And the amazing thing about stories is that they can change. You know, I talked to a mum about this one day and she reflected and she said, yeah, my dad yelled a lot, but that experience actually made me more empathetic. I feel like I really understand people's pains and I worked hard for his approval, which gave me real drive in my career. Looking back now, I wouldn't change a thing. That's what it means to reframe the pain, to find the other half of the truth. It's not to pretend that that thing wasn't painful, but to stop letting that pain, that negative value, define the entire story. Let me give you maybe an example from my own life. A few years ago, I was attacked. I suffered a brain injury. I needed really serious brain surgery. I spent almost a month in hospital. It was pretty terrifying and pretty negative. But as I recovered, something shifted in me. I realized how short life is and how fragile. And right there in that hospital room, my wife Maya and I decided that it was time to start a family. And exactly 1 year later, our daughter Sophia was born. That negative experience, that trauma, became the start of something beautiful. I wouldn't change it. I wouldn't change it for the world. So if there's something painful in your life that still lives inside you, maybe you've been carrying with you, sit with it, write it down, and ask yourself, are there any positives from this experience? Is there anything that may be stronger, kinder, more human? What else could be on the other side of that story? Because when we reframe the pain, we change the story. And when the story changes, the value changes, the emotion changes too. And maybe, just maybe, so does our life. If this resonates with you, I'd love to hear your thoughts. What's that one experience in your life that you're going to choose to see differently? Thank you for listening. Share this video with anyone you think might benefit from it.